Okay, longer video, the Jesuits and the Matrix. Well, first thing I want to say is if you think you're going to wake up in 3 minutes on an Instagram, then good luck. It ain't going to happen. I mean, Instagram, these sort of things are good for these quick ideas. And if you've done a lot of research, it can be kind of affirming, or you can question and put your comments. It can be good for that. But there's a lot of people, don't get me wrong, there's phenomenal content on Instagram. I mean, I see some of the most beautiful sort of philosophy that I then repost. Some amazing ideas, but what I do is when I come across something new, I research it, I take note, or I ask, where did you get this information from? And then in my other time, I'm just saying, and I want to make this point, if you think you're going to wake up and you're going to know the truth on these 3-minute videos, you're fucked. That's the bottom line. You're going to be deceived. And look, at the end of the day, man, it takes 6 years to get a medical degree or whatever it is. And if you think that getting all the way to the top spiritually is a lesser endeavor, let me tell you, if it is a lesser endeavor for you, then you're probably on a path that is a deception. Waking up is not simply a retreat and then having an epiphany and whatever. If that's happening, it's a counterfeit awakening. It is an effort, incredible research, incredible reflection. It's overcoming the hidden forces within oneself. It is using all that is within a man, and it takes all that is within a man or woman to truly wake up. So I just want to begin. I mean, maybe I should have said that in my 3-minute video because people are going to watch that. Look, my 3 minutes will be helpful, those videos and the videos I do. But if you're not going to do the research and if you're not going to seek the truth with all your heart, mind and soul, you ain't going to make it. Not in this life anyway. Maybe the next if there is another. So I just wanted to begin with that. Now, the Jesuits and the Matrix. Essentially, people talk about awakening, they talk about the Matrix. And what I've observed is that there's forces in the world, in the 3D, 4D, if you include time, is it? Yeah. So there is an external matrix. And what we're seeing a lot in this world is people realizing the forces at work. Obviously, it's very confusing. And those at the very top are masters of deception, the Jesuits, the Vatican Church, through the Jesuits. But that's only part of the story. Now, what I want to say is that within that matrix, there are those within Christianity and outside of Christianity that, and it's for God to judge ultimately, but these individuals are working for the freedoms within this external matrix. It is not confined to a saved Christian. I can definitely tell you that. I already have a problem with this orthodox Christian doctrine. And what I will say, I could say many things, but Christians, whilst I think they can do incredible work, and I'm sure our Heavenly Parent would approve about their work in this world, we have to remember that the Old Testament carries stories of a God that is not unlike the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, who is essentially the ruler or the Roman Catholic Church entity, along with, the leaders and the Jesuit leaders are running this planet. And there may be more entities too. I'm still doing research on this. So I've just given you an example of why I think that Christians, a lot of the authors that are digging into the Jesuits are Christian inspired and are Christians, and their work, as I said, I'm not one to judge, but merely to say, I approve, and I'm sure our Heavenly Father would approve of their work, despite aspects of their doctrine. And I was just trying to point out by looking at the Old Testament is that a Bible-believing Christian, even though they may be fighting for good and fighting the real enemy, the Old Testament's filled with extremely dark, demonic activities of a God. I won't say more than that. I just wanted to give you one example of why I don't identify as a Christian. But what I would say is in my journey as a one following the Heavenly Father, the Heavenly Parent, because the one that loves us perfectly harmonizes the caricature of a perfect mom and a perfect dad. And this is why it is a unified love, and why I don't distinguish one from the other. However, I always distinguish between the one that loves us and the gods, the imposters, so to speak. So we live in very interesting times because it's very much, there is work to do. And I think his name is Phelps, who wrote The Vatican Assassins. I've just started reading that. And an amazing guy to listen to. He gets a bit preachy. He's an Orthodox Christian. But even he's ready to take up arms. And when I first heard that, I was a bit, because I'm not sure about taking up arms myself. And I've reflected on it, and I'm still reflecting on it, but I understand where he's coming from. Given the forces at work through the Roman Catholic Church and the Jesuits, and the tens, if not hundreds of millions of people that have died at the sword, through the Crusades, through the Jesuits, and through the hidden workings of the Jesuits and the Pope and the Roman Popes and the Roman Catholic Church. For example, you could be in a city, and if by their activities they wish to rape and kill and murder your own family, then what does one do? So I sort of can understand where he's coming from, and I definitely think things are coming to a head. Like, to realize that what the Jesuits hoped to achieve with the Roman Catholic Church in World War I was not as successful as they wanted, so they kick off World War II. You can do your research on this, and there's the secret history of the Jesuits, Vatican Assassins. There's some good content. As I said, his last name is Phelps. I don't know if I have his name up here now. Just give me a second. I'll do that for you. One sec. Yeah. So, Eric John Phelps. So I encourage you to read that work. And as I've said in the shorter videos, to me it's not the completion of work to understand the forces in the world and then to try to protect oneself. And who knows, respond or defend to that. I mean, one of the reasons I don't live in Western countries that I used to live in is because I see the walls closing in. I don't feel like a free man, but where I am now, I do feel a lot freer. That has been my choice. Would I return? Maybe. I don't know, but I see what's occurring there. But I think what needs to be said as well is that it is not simply waking up to the forces in the world that seeks to destroy us and to destroy our soul or inhibit the quest to develop and become fully embodied, to fully wake up. There's also an inner role. So there's forces at work in the world we need to truly understand and understand our enemy in order to defend ourselves and to take the actions we need to take. Because I'm telling you, something's coming, something's happening, and something's coming. And it doesn't take a brain box to be aware of that. But at the same time, there's also what I like to call an inner matrix. That what I've discovered is that there are forces at work within a man and woman's soul that seeks to also imprison them. So we have an outer and we have an inner. And one also needs to overcome the inner forces within. And that has to do with becoming aware of what you're not aware of. This is where Jung's work is very powerful. And what I've realized in my own life is that there are forces a bit like gravity. One of the most significant forces I've talked about, and I've called it the topic of topics. I also refer to it as the otherness. There are forces at work that even step into our thoughts and our feelings or amplify those or manipulate this inner world of ours that doesn't belong to us. That is, I don't have the perception of sight in this hidden world, but I have the perception of sense of what is me and what is not me. And until one's able to perceive what's them and what's not them that occurs within them, then one cannot truly wake up all the way. So there's an outer, as I've mentioned, matrix, but there's an inner matrix. And within this inner matrix, I will add that there is another aspect, one could say maybe a third matrix, because, well, maybe not a third, but it's like the higher aspect of this inner matrix. When you go through this process and you start to perceive the forces at work within you, as you grow and as you, I've explained this in my longer videos, please watch those because it'll flesh out more of what I'm talking about. But basically, I'll give you a silly example. I talked to a guy who took some LSD and he sees Shiva in the sky, and therefore the heavenly world, or that beyond the physical, is all good. But I'm of the view the as we go beyond the 3D, the densities and dimensions, even though I can't perceive all of those, what I can perceive is that when we go beyond the physical, when we go deeper, it's also an elaborate matrix, because many people just sort of suspend their discernment and think that all that's coming from above or deep within is therefore. So a powerful epiphany, a powerful experience is of God. And so within this inner matrix, as we develop, there are a million deceptions to pull us off to make it all the way. And it's quite wonderful, because even though that these principles like gravity, these principles that work against us, are truly the intelligence and the smartness of it is really quite impressive. But having said that, it can become a teacher for us. That these forces at work that seeks to keep a man or woman either asleep or imagine that they're awake when they're still asleep are vast, but it creates the training that's required for us to go all the way. Now, one thing Moraviev talks about is that he talks about when one reaches the threshold, but when this work is done, again, watch my longer videos, but when this work is complete, you cross a threshold. That means that as you've, overcome these forces, and as you overcome one, it becomes more refined that you've got to overcome. But there is a specific point where the work has been sufficient and you enter into a new jurisdiction. Prior to that, all the forces at work within you and against you, and I'm not talking necessarily about the external, I'm talking about the inner now, that they are called the general law, according to Moraviev, who refers to sort of ancient schools of this teaching. Also referred to as the devil, the general law. But once one reaches and passes the threshold, they enter into a new cosmic jurisdiction, also referred to as the Christ jurisdiction. At this point, you are then under a new set of cosmic laws, a higher set. This is what is salvation. You are saved, but it's this harmony between the heavenly parent and the guidance and the work that you've done within. So, and I can testify to this experience. For others, it can only be an idea, or one could believe in what I'm saying, which I really don't want people to do. I want people to test this stuff. It can be tested for yourself. And though no one's read it when I recommend, Moraviev, Gnosis Book 1. I always leave about 4 references on my videos because they're a great way to kickstart, and this is pure, clean information. It ain't perfect information, but it is clean and really quite pure, and it's a good start. So what I've discovered though, see, look, I've looked into secret society, done a lot of reading on this 10 years ago, but in all honesty, I've drifted a bit, and I've actually got confused because you can get deep into it and gets very deep plan that kicks off, and it may go beyond the Vatican and the Jesuits. But these are, I guess, the observable, but essentially at this top, the plan, the trickery, the deception, the murder, the training is extremely complex. So if you care about the world and you care about your freedom, you need to know your enemy, and a great place to start is with the Jesuits. Further reading, I'm trying to look into more. I did look into the history of America and how they've basically America is under Vatican control and has been for over 100 years, and how they usurped, the Protestant creed. It's quite interesting to know that when America was formed at the beginning, it was a time when the Jesuits had been thrown out of many countries and disbanded. And this is kind of from God, because if they hadn't been disbanded, we never would have had America. But sure enough, they rebanded like they've been doing for centuries, and now they control it. So the Jesuits is a great place to start. What I want to look into more, as I said, modern times and the Jesuits. I also want to go further back, because you've got the Vatican, you've got the Roman Empire, and then you've got the Bible, the Old Testament, talking about the sons of God, and this idea of hybrids, the sons of God mixing with the daughters of men. And obviously we start to get into the alien topic then, and I want to contrast between alien ideas and demonic ideas in terms of origins. I have looked into the Anunnaki. Interesting read also with Wes Penray's work. I've read that a few times, but I'm basically going to get into a lot of that stuff. So in some ways this is a beginning, because even I had overlooked really the Vatican Jesuit aspect. And then people they talk about the Jews this and the Jews that. And I've been reading and learning how Karl Marx was trained by the Jesuit order, and the socialism or the social justice along with communism is stemming from the Vatican, and even reflects the doctrine of the Vatican and the Jesuit order. The SS was modeled on the Jesuit order. Even I've read that the Marines and these approaches to wipe the mind, no question, you take orders to empty the mind, stems from the Jesuit order. So this is really quite fascinating for me. As I said, I've done a lot of research, but I've got a lot more to do. And I have been looking into Jordan Maxwell as well. Again, I don't agree with everything, but that's what real research is. It's not just suddenly become a disciple of someone. However, I really want to get more deeply into where he's coming from, the research he's doing, which is why I'm trying to read some of his books. I don't think I'll be able to read all of them. So anyway, I want to leave you with that. And ultimately, I want to say, look, it is about the inner awakening. And I've talked about this point. It's holism, As spirituality doesn't understand the forces in the world, or is able to see the spiritual inclination of all things that happen in this world are off the plot. So many people compartmentalize. I got my awakening, I got my little guru, my little chants, my little rituals, and what's going on in the world is totally separate. A true awakening is one where one perceives the spiritual nature and the forces at work in all things, even things like corona. This is a true awakening and a full awakening. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I hope it helps someone out there.